Welcome to Pixel Composer 1.19.1. So this is the first beta launch since the 1.19 stable. And the biggest feature in this one is the new RigidSim. I call it RigidSim 2.0. And it means that you have more control over the simulation and more property that you can use as well. So first we have the time step and quality control. So time step here used to control the simulation speed, and the quality here is used to control simulation quality, right? Because it's our property that you can control and animate it, you can now do like slow-mo effect and stuff like that. The object also got new simulation properties, like you can set it to use continuous collision detection or CCD, which can be useful when you try to animate like a bullet, like a small object that moves very fast. If you don't check this, then it can skip object between frames. However, there are going to be performance costs on that, so be careful and use it sparingly. And there are a number of new nodes in these RigidSim groups. We have different ways to create rigid body object, like using a segment. So you can just create a collision segment. There are path collider, similar to segment, but now you can use path data to define the collision. You now have built-in fracture creator, so this used to require a fairly big setup, right, to fracture or separate your shapes and then combine it back and then create object and stuff like that. But now I combine it into a single node, so you only have to provide a base texture and the fracture maps, and it's just gonna do all the shape separation, fracture, and rigid body object creation, all the things by itself. There's also an option to create a joint or to try to connect each of the fragment and then define something like a breaking force if you want the piece to break apart after some collision. There's also a new sensor type. This sensor can be used to detect rigid body shapes in the area. There are joint nodes that you can create to combine two rigid body objects using different joint types. And there are get collision nodes that you can use to get all the collision data. And the rigid body override also got a rework to be more user-friendly, more usable. Next is the array trim node. So this is a very simple node that will just take an array and then reduce the size by trimming or cutting the member either at the beginning or the end. And there are general performance improvement, especially on the triangulation and Poisson distribution. The font data type now accepts text input. I think the only place that we use font data is the draw text node, where you can put in font here. Now you can connect the font name as a text string directly into the font. And then we have a number of improvements on the already existed node. The scale to fit mode in the scale node now have an option to change your fit mode to either minimum or maximum, so that it's gonna keep the aspect ratio of your image. The gap contract node now got improved algorithm, so now when you try to use it with like curve shape, the gap that it generates should be a little bit more accurate. The export node now have the batch GIF option, so when you try to use the GIF animation, try to export the GIF animation, sometimes if your animation is too big or too long, it can cause memory problems. If you have error warning pop-ups, then you can try to adjust the batch GIF properties. So the value here should be like a divisor of your frame count. So if you have 100 frames, then you should set it to 75, for example. What it does is it's just gonna batch the export. Instead of having one long GIF, it's just gonna export 4 shorter GIF and then try to combine it afterward, which should help with memory problems. The region fill now have a threshold setting to control how similar two color has to be considered the same region. There's now also a gradient input to fill a random color. And for filter type, there's also an option to disable pixel expansion, so that it's just gonna ignore the pixel that doesn't match the filter color, instead of trying to expand the fill area to it. The bloom node now got the new directional blur type. And on the topic of directional blur, there is now also a new option called fade distance. So if you click on it, you're gonna see that the blur is become a bit smoother. I think it should be more obvious when the direction is a little bit more diagonal like this, right? This is the normal type and this is the fade distance. Then the random node now got a non-deterministic option. If you disable the deterministic option here, it means it's gonna reshuffle itself every time it updates, which you can use this if you want your animation to look different every time you run it. The cache node and the cache group node also got UX improvement in how you modify the cache member. So when you create a cache node, it will try to get all the input node, right, and then put it in this cache group. And what it means is that when you play the animation and it cache all the frame it needed, it will then disable those groups so that it doesn't have to render again in second time. So now if you want to modify the cache member, you have to click on the cache, and the button here that used to be generate cache group will be an edit group button. Click on it and now you can just click to toggle a node inside outside the cache. And next we have an improvement on the user interface. Let's take a look at the animation panels here. You can now double click on the timeline frame area, either up here or down here, and then type in the frame you want to go to directly. And the same thing with the frame length adjustment as well. Now it will show you the hotkey you have to press to toggle different functions. either to adjust the length or to stretch animation. Now if you hold, for example, hold Control and then double click, you will now be able to just type in the length that you want, and if you just adjust to that length. Then in the preview panel, you can now press escape key to escape from the current tool to reset the current tools. And this will be all the features we have in this version. And as usual, we have little bug fix I'm gonna show on screen right now. The list may not be really long because a lot of bug fixes are already being done in the numerous patches that I released in the past month. The 1.19 quote-unquote stable release is not really stable. It's probably the worst, the most unstable release I've ever done. I think it's have like 11 patches, and I'm really sorry that I haven't done enough testing to make sure that thing doesn't go badly. But yeah, a lot of bugs already being included in all of those patches. But that will be all for today's video. So thank you everyone for watching. Special thanks for every Patreon member, and see you in the next one.